Hello, everybody. On behalf of Iland and Experis, I want to thank you for coming to today's presentation, Accelerating IT Initiatives with Cloud Infrastructure from Experis and Iland. Let me go ahead and just do a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, so this will be available for you at a later date, so you can show it to colleagues and friends and just watch it, all the time. It's great. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and then I'll give it over to Jake for a couple minutes, and then we'll kind of go through the presentation. So we're going to do a little bit of recap. So this is the third of our solutions series, covering cloud-based backup, disaster recovery, infrastructure, everything like that with Experis. It's been really awesome working with them, so we can showcase you all the iland solutions and what you can achieve to kind of, meet your IT goals. Then we're going to talk about driving business value with the cloud, and then we're going to talk about, how do you actually get there and what does that mean? So let's go ahead and start with Jake. If you can hop on in and talk a little bit about Experis and tell me when to go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of jump into the presentation.
Absolutely. And thank you, Will, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Schlanker with Experis Technology Group. We are an technology architecture firm with offices in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. We've been in business for just coming up on 20 years now. And our focus is really on designing hybrid cloud and data management type solutions for our clients, which include medium and large enterprises, federal integrators, and healthcare clients. So whether your data lives on-prem, off-prem, or more likely a hybrid of the two, or you need help defining where that belongs, we at Experis specialize in the technology that powers your business. Well, we can jump to the next slide.
Awesome, yep.
So from this slide, as you can see, we have a strong ecosystem of partners that help us deliver the solutions I discussed, from Veeam, HP, Microsoft, Exegrid, iland, Aruba, etc., and so on. And I'd like to thank Iland specifically for sponsoring our webinar today. Back to you, Will.
Thank you, Jake. That's awesome. Yeah. So, after this presentation or any of the other presentations, feel free to reach out to your Experis rep and talk to them about all the different solutions that we can do as a joint, provider / integrator / customers. Some really cool stuff. So, Iland's biggest focus is about protecting business and powering innovation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do that, but I'm going to kind of recap a little bit before, in case you didn't see some of the other stuff. That way it gives you a little bit of insight into what we talked about last time. You can go check out that stuff and talk to your Experis reps around that as well. So last time, what did we talk about? We talked about multi-layered data protection. So what does that mean, right? So everybody is talking about IT resilience and data protection and ransomware and security and all that stuff. So the cloud really kind of accelerates your ability to protect and recover and remediate for any number of things. And we talked about that last time, or the last two times. We talked about, local backups, and we talked about cloud-based backups, and then we talked about the move to disaster recovery as a service, and how it has enabled IT organizations around the world to not have to worry about, a secondary data site and multiple copies of hardware and all of that stuff. And so, as a cloud company, we like to say, cloud accelerates IT. And if you think about what it was like 5 years ago, I mean, even just backing up and taking your tapes and putting them onto a truck and putting them in a warehouse, the times have changed and times have gotten better, and we've got all sorts of really cool technology. And so we kind of talked a little bit about backups. We talked about object storage. We talked about disaster recovery. We talked about SaaS-based recovery with Office 365. And so, if you go check out those other webcasts, if you didn't see them last time, you can find out more about the Iland and Experis solution and how we can help deliver that data protection and IT resilience and stuff like that. But now we get to some really, really, really fun, exciting stuff. And it's all about delivering business value with cloud-based infrastructure. And, it's so funny because, we've been saying for years, cloud first and native cloud and designed in the cloud and born in the cloud and best of breed and all this stuff. But a lot of it is just words, right? So what does it really mean to you as an IT organization, as an IT person, when someone says, hey, we need to look at cloud, or, we want to up-level IT and actually deliver business value. So let's talk about that. So, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 2 decades now, and I feel like, I've gone through some of the really, really rough stuff, NT3.5 and, hardware-based this and that, and all the way up to virtualization and encapsulation and then storage and, storage area networks and fiber channel and, Ethernet over IP. And then all of a sudden it's cloud and, SaaS and all this stuff. And so I've seen a lot of really cool stuff. But one of the things that you notice is over the years, traditional IT really hasn't changed, right? So, you had infrastructure changes with like virtualization and stuff like that. But for the most part, all it did was encapsulate and consolidate your data center down. But you're still dealing with racks and stacks and, hardware and cooling and power and cables and, VLANs and all that stuff. And, there is value in all of that, right? So, but what we're seeing in today's organization is that IT is always under the gun as far as budget, manpower, execution time, etc. And what they're finding is that for the most part, quote unquote, keeping the lights on isn't what IT is good at anymore. IT is really good at delivering business value, accelerating the business with new technologies. And half the time you're just trying to get out of your own way. You're trying to keep up to date with all the things you need to do so that you can innovate for your company. And so this has never been a conversation of, well, IT doesn't need to exist. It's more about IT needs to evolve to meet the needs of the business, because ultimately at the end of the day, all of us, that's what we do. Is we support our business, we support our customers, we support our clients. And if I have the opportunity to spend an hour, racking and stacking some gear, or implementing a brand new architecture that's going to, make my company a whole bunch of money, I know which one my executives want me to do, right? So we talk about traditional IT, and then we talk about focusing on business value, and that's the IT innovation, the new, new applications and new databases and all that stuff. And that's what's really, really important. And for the most part, I talk to people all the time, and that's what they get excited about. Nobody's excited about, updating the firmware of a switch anymore, right? I mean, they can do it, and they need to do it and all that stuff. But really, people get excited about bringing new technologies to their organization and to their customers and being like, look how cool this is, and look at what the challenges that we can solve with this. And cloud really allows you to do that because of the agility and the scale and the affordability. Back in the days, right, when you had to go out and purchase a whole bunch of hardware, and then, you spent 3 months trying to implement a new solution, and then when you realize it doesn't work, you're kind of stuck. Cloud gives you sort of a really fast, agile way to test new technologies and test new theories. Nowadays you can go ahead and you can install, 5 different, CRM packages and test out to see which one works for you, and then make that as your choice. So really, cloud allows you to kind of accelerate all the things that people are asking you to do, so that you can focus on that business value. So, what does that mean, right? So there's a whole bunch of ways of doing it, right? You talk about containers and Kubernetes, and you're talking about, all kinds of crazy stuff. But for the most part, as IT professionals, as IT people, we still think in the terms of virtual machines. We still think about Windows boxes and Linux boxes and networking and switching and that kind of stuff. That's kind of our world. Containers and Kubernetes and, microservices and all that stuff, that's coming, and that's going to be in everybody's wheelhouse soon. But traditional IT still needs to have kind of that foundation of virtual machines and, Windows boxes and Linux boxes and stuff like that. So that's where we introduce infrastructure as a service. And so infrastructure as a service, with the solution from Iland and Experis, really what it is it's taking your skill sets, your VMware knowledge, your VMware, experience, your virtual machines themselves, and moving them to a cloud-based architecture that runs on VMware, and it has all of the tools, all of the solutions that you are familiar with, so that you never lose productivity, you don't lose workflow, you don't lose capabilities, you don't lose visibility and management. But now what you can do is you can spend less time worrying about kind of the bottom stack, the traditional IT stack, and focus more on what the applications are doing for your business, and how you can implement and be more agile and be faster for deploying new stuff. So that's what infrastructure as a service is, and it's kind of like the end of this this journey that we've been having. We talked about backup to the cloud, we talked about disaster recovery, and we think about it. Disaster recovery is really just running your infrastructure somewhere else in the case of a disaster. But the reality of it is, there's nothing that says you can't just do that all the time, and that's what infrastructure as a service really does. And it's all about understanding what you're capable of and what the architecture is capable of, and then making sure that you can leverage it to continue to further your IT goals, right? So cloud should accelerate the process and not hinder it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all the things that you'd probably do on a day-to-day basis and how cloud and how the iland solution can help you with that. Right, so the biggest thing pretty much everybody does is provision and deploy. Doesn't matter if it's a new virtual machine, or you're changing the CPU type, or you're adding more RAM, you're adding a disk, whatever. You're constantly in Virtual Center. You're constantly messing around with that stuff, right? So being able to provision and deploy rapidly and quickly is imperative. And I'm going to show you some screenshots. If we have any time, we're going to pop into the live demonstration of the UI. But being able to quickly provision either single virtual machines or multiple virtual machines, either based on catalogs, based on images, whatever, just like you do today, right? So you don't want to lose that capability. Monitoring is especially important, right? Today you probably have 5 or 6 different tools that you have in your environment for monitoring performance and utilization and, storage capacity and, CPU wait time and all that stuff. Well, you don't want to lose any of that, right? Because you use that for troubleshooting. You use it to make decisions and choices about what is going to be deployed and what you're going to do. So you can't lose that. You want to make sure you have access to all that. And then management, right? You don't want to, everybody's used to Virtual Center, whether it's the client or the thin client or the web client, or PowerShell or PowerCLI. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing for a workflow perspective on site doesn't change when you move to the cloud. Same back-end infrastructure, same concepts, right? You don't have to worry about, VMware hardware version 14 is something different because I'm in some weird thing. Like, no, it's a VMware-based cloud. Now you can still do all of the things that you do on site, and you want to manage it all through a single unified interface. And that's what the iland Secure Cloud Console brings to you. Reporting, both real-time or historical, right? We do this all the time with either Splunk or, whatever tools you may be using on site for that log aggregation and making sure that everything is, doing what it's supposed to do, either real-time or so you need to look back and say, well, every Thursday I have an issue and I'm going to go through the logs and figure out what that is. You don't want to lose visibility or access to that. Automation is huge, right? So when you think about all the things that you can do on site, whether you do it or not, leveraging APIs, leveraging PowerShell, PowerCLI, automation wizards and scripts, when you want to make changes to your virtualized networking or your virtualized environment, you want to modify, 50 virtual machines. You don't want to do it by hand, so you've written a PowerShell script to do it on site. You want to make sure that you can take those same tools and those same processes and bring them with you to the cloud. And then security. Security and compliance is a huge deal because, when you think about your own site, you're already providing your own security and compliance tools, processes, training, applications, all that stuff. And so when you move to the cloud, when you're investigating that kind of next step, you need to make sure that you have the same, if not better, security controls in place in the cloud. And that's really important because, as we all know, security is a big issue and compliance is a big issue, and cybercrime and cyber threat and malicious users, malicious software, and all that stuff. The whole stuff we talked about, why you need data protection and disaster recovery and IT resilience to begin with, still carries forward with actual infrastructure. So when you're running your infrastructure in the cloud, you need to make sure that you have security and compliance, and that you're complying with both your local regulations, your any sort of overviews that you have personally or as a company, or even globally if you're messing around with data across the world. You've got GDPR and you've got all these different things like that. So you need to make make sure that when you're investigating cloud and you're moving to the cloud, security and compliance isn't the very last thing you take a look at, because then that process and that progress is going to stall. The very first thing you do is you bring in your InfoSec people or your CISO and say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do, and this is the process that we're going to do together to make sure that it meets all the needs that you have, both from a technology perspective, but also security and compliance. So all of this stuff goes through people's minds, when you start thinking about cloud, and holy cow, is it overwhelming. And so it gets to the point where you say, you know what, it's just easier for me to just keep doing what I'm doing. But the reality of it is we can do better, and we can help you with that. Between Iland and Experis, we can help you understand what makes sense to move to the cloud, what makes sense to stay on site, what makes sense to stay as a virtual machine, what makes sense to be containerized, all that stuff. Like that, this is a journey that everyone's going through. We help customers all the time. Experis helps customers all the time. So we are going to help you understand what it is you're trying to do and make sure that you're successful in doing it. The big thing is about never losing visibility or management, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Secure Cloud Console, but this is kind of your window into all of your cloud services. Now, if you attended our backup or our disaster recovery sessions, you'll have seen some of the screenshots, because it's the same interface for everything. We have one single unified management console that allows you to control and manage everything from object storage to backups to disaster recovery to automation to security to actual infrastructure. And that's what we're kind of talking about today. So the Iland Secure Cloud Console is the platform. A lot of people hate to say the word single pane of glass, but it really is. It's your single pane of glass into all of your cloud resources, no matter where they are globally, because you can see them all from within the same interface. And I'll show you that. So console.iland.cloud.com is a simple, easy URL to go to. But from here, and like I said, we've got plenty of time, so I'll hop into the live demo and show you. But from here, you see everything that you care about from a cloud perspective, whether it's your user list, whether it's logs, whether it's your support tickets, whether it's chat with the team, whether it's billing, all of that stuff that is important to you is all visible from within this single console pane. You always have complete control of everything, and that's important to notice. Powerful global management. So one of the big things about going to the cloud, right, is really this understanding of, as a global cloud provider, Iland has data centers all over the world. And, there are companies who require that their data can only live in certain places. If you're a company and you do business in Germany, that Germany data can only live in a German data center, and it can't cross, international boundaries. And so you need to be able to manage that data center as well as maybe your US data center, or as well as some of your other data centers, right? So you have to understand that you don't want to go to, Germany.iland.com and, Australia and Japan and, Dallas. You want to be able to manage everything from a single pane of glass and do everything that you normally would. So it's like, when you think about virtual center and how you can, add a whole bunch of virtual centers no matter where they are in different data centers in different locales, you do the same thing, but now you add in security and compliance, you add in user management, you add in backups and disaster recovery and automation and provisioning and billing and all that stuff. So that's the capabilities that you have at your fingertips. Security is built in. Now, we are really proud of this, and there's a real good reason. When you think about how security and compliance has kind of evolved, back in the old days, IT didn't really care, right? I mean, you had your antivirus and you were good to go. You had your firewalls and you were good to go. But when it came to things like compliance and HIPAA and PCI DSS and SOX and FERPA and HERPA and all that stuff, like that was somebody else's job, right? You had a CISO, you had an InfoSec, you had all those kind of people. But nowadays, I mean, it is critical that IT is, joined at the hip with security teams about everything, whether it's ransomware, whether it's malicious software, malicious users, whether it's auditing, whether it's e-hold for, legal, somebody's email, somebody's, personal files, all that stuff. IT is completely integrated now with it. And so because of that, we feel that security should also be a huge part of your cloud portfolio. And so with that, we actually have an entire suite of security products that are already running inside of our cloud. And what that does is it allows for you to instantly bring something up in the cloud and know that there's antivirus, there's vulnerability scanning, there's web reputation, there's firewalls, there's denial of service attacks, and all of that stuff is all built into it. So when you bring a system online, it's already part of the security ecosystem. As a cloud provider, we are constantly evolving our security posture as well as our compliance posture. And it just kind of gives you that extra level of security that that you don't have to do all of the things you have to do as an IT person and then also figure out how you're going to secure your cloud infrastructure. Now, when I talk about compliance, there's security compliance always comes down to this whole, well, what is compliance and what is security, because they're always lumped into the same thing. And honestly, the easy way to talk about it is security is kind of the day-to-day, what you're doing, what application are you using, what protective methods are you doing, etc. Where compliance is basically the list of all the things that you should be doing to meet those requirements. And the good thing about compliance is when you go to somebody, you talk to them about their compliance attestations and certifications, what it does is it allows for you to gauge, like, is this company following all the rules that I would be following? And if so, good. And that way you don't have to ask someone, okay, well, what are your 74 different steps in the case of a firewall breach, or what? You don't have to worry about that, because this company leverages the following certifications from a compliance standpoint, so I know that they're going to do ISO and PCI and HIPAA and all that stuff, right? There's a whole list of them, and depending on where you are in the world, you have to follow some of this stuff. And you may not be in a regulated industry, you may not be legal or healthcare and stuff like that, but knowing that those organizations follow those certifications and attestations allows you to know that even if you don't as a company because you're required to, you still have that same level of security and sense of well-being because of that. And then when you start talking about like global stuff, that's when it gets scary. I mean, you read about, some of the GDPR fines that are millions and millions of dollars, all because of something that wasn't done correctly. You want to make sure that when you're leveraging cloud, you're doing it so that kind of stuff doesn't happen. What are the challenges, I would say, about going to cloud? And one of the things that always causes people to stumble is the fact that you're not going to you're not going to the store, you're not buying a SAN and plugging it in and paying for 3 years, and it's that's yours, right? That's your box, that's your rack, that's your hardware. Cloud isn't like that anymore, right? Cloud is kind of this agile, pay as you need, pay as you consume thing, which is great because it changes a lot of that, CapEx model into an OpEx model, which is great. I mean, we do it in our consumer lives every day, right? I mean, you've got Netflix and Spotify and Disney Plus and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's been a slower adoption in the enterprise space because you kind of want that, well, I want that piece of hardware. But now when you think about it, I mean, you're buying this piece of hardware for 3 years and, you're trying to justify the budget now for the next 3 years. And are you buying too much? Are you buying not enough? And what happens in 2 years? Like all of that stuff. And cloud really introduces this agile method of being able to just, I need more, buy it. I spend more, or I consume more, go for it, right? But you need to make sure you have complete visibility into your billing at all times, because what you don't want to do, right? You know how easy it is when you own the hardware and you've got, 4 terabytes or 20 terabytes or whatever, and you're like, I just want to spin up 5 more VMs because I can, and then I'll throw some test stuff on there, and then I'll just leave them running because they're just running. You haven't logged into them in 6 months or whatever. You could do that in the cloud. There's nothing that stops you, but you want to make sure that when you're accessing, resources, because you're going to be paying for them, you want to make sure that you're actually utilizing them for what they're used for, right? So you don't want to spin up 50 virtual machines for, somebody to do a test and dev thing and then never turn it off or whatever, right? So you have to have complete and, transparent visibility into your billing and utilization all the time. So within the console, you can see real-time statistics for, CPU and RAM and storage and bandwidth and everything like that. You can also see how it pans out via the months or over the years, everything like that. So it's very important that you understand, how your CapEx model to OpEx model has changed, and then how you're actually utilizing it. And that's all within the console as well. One of the other things about going to cloud is, again, this is no longer your environment, right? So you want to make sure that you have complete and total access to the support staff for that interface, right? I mean, if you think about, as a consumer, you buy something that's on the cloud, and it's $1.99 a month, and you try to get help with it, and it may be 5 days before somebody reaches back into you. This is now your enterprise organization. This is running your business. You can't deal with that. Like, it's not. I don't want to just put in a support ticket and hope that in 3 days somebody calls me. I want instant access. And so from within the console, either you can call us, you can do live chat. We actually do, reports internally, so that if something happens, like, we can say, hey, you know what, you made a change on your firewall and now you've got no connections coming in. Do you need help with that? That sort of things. You want to make sure that, because this is running your business, you want to make sure that support is as important to you in this journey as it is when you're buying hardware on site or doing something like that. So the entire Iland Secure Cloud Console has full integration to all of our support team. You can pick up a phone, you can chat, all of that stuff. And it's very important to understand that support is a big part of this infrastructure as a service, conversation, and you have to look into that. You want to make sure that if something happens or if you have questions, somebody's there to answer them, and it's not via email 3 days from now. So here's a couple of screenshots of the actual interface. I'm going to actually go through this because, I was able to get the demo up and running. So I'm going to show you some screenshots, and we're going to jump into the live demonstration after the end part, and I'll actually kind of walk you through it. But these are some screenshots for the various different tools that we have. This right here is a performance for your RPO for cloud-based replication. So if you're doing cloud-to-cloud disaster recovery, obviously, disaster recovery is for multiple things, right? The first thing is, obviously, in case something happens, natural disaster or data outage or something like that. But just because you go to the cloud doesn't mean that those go away, right? And while the data center probably isn't going to be impacted by a natural disaster, if your virtual machine goes out because of corruption or ransomware or something like that, or mistake, somebody accidentally deletes it, you still need disaster recovery. And so you can take a look at some of the charts and things like that we have inside the console. Being able to automate and orchestrate your disaster recovery runbooks are important. Failover wizards, failover reports. And when we talk about reporting, there's so many different reports. You can have your compliance reports and your security reports and your utilization reports and your billing reports. All of that stuff is very important. Here you have the networking. So, one of the big things as we move to kind of this software-defined networking age or software-defined, data center, as sometimes you'll see SDC, right? Software-defined or SDDC as software-defined data center. Leveraging the VMware NSX technology to create these virtualized networks is very important. But again, you need to make sure that you have the same capabilities to be able to manage and maintain them as you do everywhere else, right? So instead of opening up, the web interface for your, top of rack switches, you're now going through the same, cloud console and creating your VLANs and creating your firewalls and your, port forwarding and all that stuff, your DNS things. All of that stuff is within the Secure Cloud Console, so you can manage and maintain that. And when I talked about provisioning earlier, like provisioning a new virtual machine, provisioning a new virtual network, all that stuff is so easy now because it's all virtualized, it's all automated, and you can do it all from within the wizards, and I'll show you that in a second. Looking at individual performance metrics and capabilities of virtual machines is super important, right? So, today you go to Virtual Center and you right-click on our VM, right? We've been doing that for years, and now it's almost ingrained in our body. You right-click on it, and you're like, okay, I got to do this, 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 and this. And so those same capabilities exist. And so while it's not the Virtual Center interface, all of the information, all of the capabilities are all there for you. Everything from opening up a VM console to changing the CPU type to, adding a disk to mounting an ISO, like all of that stuff still exists. so that your day-to-day, management tasks, your day-to-day processes, they don't change. It may look a little bit different, but, click here, do this. It's the same thing, right? We leverage the same APIs and the same workflows so that you don't have to change and relearn everything you've ever done over the last 10 years. Events, one of the cool things about, an infrastructure as a service is, again, we talked about this before, backup, disaster recovery, all that stuff is very important. And so when you move to the cloud, you don't get rid of that, right? And so built into the secure cloud is automatic backups of your virtual machines. And what's really cool about that is the virtual machines are automatically backed up, and they're kind of hidden. So even if you have, if there's, right now there's this really nasty malware that's out there that can actually corrupt and encrypt backup files and local disks and stuff like that. So that can't happen inside the secure cloud console. And then in addition to that, on top of that, what if there's a malicious user? Like, we hate to ever think that there potentially could ever be somebody with evil thoughts or whatever. But the fact is, it happens. And so these backups of these virtual machines are completely protected from them as well. So even if a malicious user comes in and they delete the virtual machines, there's still a copy of your environment in a place that only support can access to recover for you. So it gives you that extra layer of protection and that air-gapped capability as well. Here's the security screen. I'll show you this as well, but basically all of the vulnerabilities and malware and viruses and integrity and web reputation and intrusion detection, all the stuff like that, all from within the same console screen. Billing, we talked about how important that is, and I'll show you that. And then, so this is all great. This is awesome. Well, we're so excited. We can't wait to start. We want to, call up Experis and we want to start this process. How do we get there? What do we do, right? And so, we got a lot of tools and we got a lot of processes. Iland has this tool called Catalyst, and what it is it's a free analysis tool for your environment that will actually scan all of your virtual infrastructure. And it gives this really cool report that says, hey, look, this is what you need, because think about it. Like, when you go out and buy your own hardware and you've got, gobs of stuff, you may either be exceeding it or not utilizing it at all or anything like that. But when you say, okay, well, I want to go to the cloud, and now cloud is purchased kind of as a consumed resource, and they say, well, great, we'd love to have you. How much do you need? And you say, well, I don't know. I've got 100 VMs. Does that count? Well, how much is 100 VMs? What's your CPU? What's your memory footprint? What's your storage capabilities? All that stuff, right? So Iland Catalyst figures all that out for you, right? It allows for you to create, multiple groups. You can call them tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s. You can call them silver and gold. It allows you to scan your environment and figure out what it is you want to bring. And then we also have bandwidth tests and capabilities between different data centers. So you can say, well, if I'm gonna run this in Australia, what does my bandwidth look like? If I'm gonna run this in Canada, what's my bandwidth look like? That kind of stuff. And then it'll also let you know, if I'm adding this to my existing services, my disaster recovery or my backup services, like, how does that impact my cloud portfolio and stuff like that. It really allows for you to truly right-size your cloud solution, because that's what's so great about cloud is, if you need, 5 somethings, you pay for 5 somethings, and then when you need 6 somethings, you just add 1, right? You don't have to buy 50 and then hope that you can fill it up with stuff. So Catalyst is a free tool that will help you analyze. And then, working with Experis reps, you can actually figure out, okay, well, this is, do I really need to bring these virtual machines? Are these outdated? Do I need to do this? Am I going to migrate? Am I going to, consolidate? Am I going to bring something up new? That kind of stuff. This is what I was talking about. You can assess your bandwidth and pick the best cloud location based on latency. So this could be based on maybe you're moving like your tier 1 stuff to the cloud, and you still need to be able to communicate with it from your on-site location. How does that work? How is the bandwidth between sites and all of that? And then from our side, we'll actually automate the pre-checks to make sure that everything's okay. If you're like, oh, hey, this is it's a Windows ME virtual machine running raw device mappings with a, 4 terabyte attached SCSI disk, we're going to say, well, you know what, we may have to do some changes with that. But the reality of it, is you don't have to make any impact impactful changes to your environment, we'll be able to say, hey, look, these are the 95% that's going to be a perfect fit, and this is not. Either let's take a look at it. Maybe it's creating something new. Maybe it's hardware migration. Maybe it's on-site co-location. Whatever needs to happen for those particular devices. This allows us to find out all that information before you try to make that journey and say, oh, this doesn't work. Why not? I need help. So at Iland, our focus is your success. So whether you're doing backup, disaster recovery, fully hosted cloud-based infrastructure, all of that stuff, we provide you this resilient solution. And Experis is going to be the people that are going to help you make that journey, whether it's the first step with backup as a service all the way to disaster recovery. So what I'm going to do now is, this is just a quick little blurb about us. We've been doing this for a whole bunch of years. We've got, all these awards and, Gartner Leader and Magic Quadrant for Disaster Recovery as a Service the last 4 years, all these vendor awards and stuff like that. So we've been around, we've been doing this for a long time. We've been helping customers. And one of the coolest parts about, talking to customers every single day is I get to understand what their challenges are. And it's not, I talk to people all the time and their challenges aren't much different than anybody else, right? Everyone is trying to, be more agile, solve problems faster, deliver better value to the business, do more with less, all of that stuff. And we are very excited to be working with Experis to help you understand your challenges, understand what you're trying to do, and then kind of get you there. So, great satisfaction scores. Everybody loves our support. Everybody's super happy with us. Let me do this. Let me go to here, and then I will actually move to the Cloud Console because we have a couple of minutes that I can show you guys. So this is the Iland Secure Cloud Console. I showed you some screenshots, but this is the live version. So one of the cool things about this is, whenever you start talking about, cloud anything, right? The very first thing people talk about is like, is it secure? Who's going to access it? All that stuff. So within the Cloud Console, we have all of our user management. And so we have this role-based access. And now role-based access can be used for many, many different things, just like you do inside Virtual Center, just like you do inside of AD. You can create different roles based on who needs to do what. The finance person needs to be able to at least pull a report of the bill, but you probably don't want them deploying, 50 new virtual machines, right? Or, the junior admin needs to be able to look at virtual machines, but maybe not change the CPU utilization, or whatever it is you're trying to do. Whatever fits the mold of what you're doing locally, you can kind of replicate that in the cloud. Single sign-on is something that we're going to be bringing to this as well. We know a lot of people are excited about that. What that'll do is it'll allow you to have that single sign-on experience and kind of transfer your Active Directory credentials across all of your different stuff. We still talk about leveraging different roles, right? You don't want to have Janet who's an admin just have a single user. You want Janet-admin and you want Janet as a regular user so that everything can be logged and fully qualified and stuff like that. But all that stuff is capable within here. And then once you get past role-based access and user accounts and stuff like that, the next thing you start talking about is really the security and compliance stuff. So let's go to over here. You can see all of my different sites. So, we've got a couple in Dallas. We've got UK, Australia, Sydney, Australia, Singapore. So if I go to this Dallas one and I click over here on the security tab, this is going to show me all of the security information. Again, like I talked about, we're running all these security scans and security suite in the background. This is going to give me that report for this particular location. And you'll see over here, we've got multiple different virtual data centers. So here's where when you start consolidating, your on-site locations, right? You have, a data center across multiple different, different states, and you're trying to consolidate, or you've got a bunch of different, remote offices, and you're bringing everything together. You can still virtually segment them based on either, budget or billing or performance or needs, or just make it easy for yourself to just do that kind of stuff. So you can have multiple different virtual data centers. You can have virtual applications, which are a combination of virtual machines that are all working together. Think about it as a, as a dependencies. So you can have dependencies, and you can kind of create those things. Again, just more like, and then you can name them like Corey123 delete me. Sure, why not? So, and then over here you have all your virtual machines, right? And just like before, any of your virtual machines, you can click on any of them. Just like within Virtual Center, all of the same statistics we pull from Virtual Center are all visible here. So you have everything from, the CPU and the RAM, and, is it running? Are VMware tools installed? What version of VMware tools? You can do all of your power on, power off stuff here. You can do all of your reconfigure, so you can change your memory, you can change your CPU, you can change VNICs, you can change VLANs, you can create a snapshot, you can add an ISO, you can open up the console, right? When you think about cloud, and you think about sometimes how you want to be able to get inside that machine, but because it's not configured properly for the network, you can't get into it because it's asking for an RDP session. Being able to open the console is a huge benefit, right? You can open up the console, and whether it has a network or not, you can troubleshoot why is it posting at the blue screen or at the black screen? Why is it not getting onto the network? For some reason, the virtual NIC inside has been disabled at the Windows layer. Like, those are all things you can't do without getting into the console and opening up the virtual machine. So all of that there is available. All of your performance, you have real time and historical, as well as, CPU, if you have CPU wait triggers and all that stuff, you can configure all these alerts. So you can say, hey, when this server reaches a certain threshold, I want to know. You can actually limit them. So, when you think about today in your environment, whether you have, hardware distribution or anything like that, where you're trying to load balance, like we have all that in the background. You don't have to worry about that. You no longer have to worry about, DRS or storage DRS or any of that stuff. We take care of all that, but you still want to make sure that your virtual machine itself is performing. So if the VM itself is exceeding the resources that you've actually given it, you want to be able to be alerted to it and understand that. Down here you have your performance on your storage, and you can have read-write latencies and all of that stuff. All of the things, all of the metrics that you care about for either troubleshooting or understanding utilization and performance is all here as well. So everything you can do from a monitoring and management perspective is all within the console. Then over here you have your backups. We talked a little bit about that. Being able to recover a virtual machine to a point in time, or you can actually do some other cool recovery options as well. You see a whole bunch of recent events, and this is going to be everything from, somebody turned it on, somebody turned it off, somebody deleted it, took a snapshot, all that stuff. Over here we have all of our NSX Gateways, or our virtual software-defined networkings. So you can start to see because of the way things are done differently in quote unquote the cloud, you need to make sure that you can manage your internal but also your external facing, right? So when you think about how you access and how you communicate with your stuff, because you're no longer inside your building, like if you have a dedicated VLAN and people are coming in and they've got their laptop and it can only talk to there, well, that's great, but how do you do that in the cloud, right? So you need to understand the whole networking challenges that, somebody is sitting at their desk and you have a switch out to the internet. You need to still be able to access that information inside, whether it's a VPN, whether it's dedicated link or tunnel or, all that stuff. That's all accessible and it's all doable, but you want to make sure that only your people get in and nobody else, right? That's the whole idea behind it. And you can configure all of that stuff here, your firewalls, your netting, your, port forwarding, all that stuff is all configurable here. When we talk about ease of provisioning and deployment from either gateways but also virtual machines, we have a whole host of public catalogs. So, one of the cool things about the way Island does their, virtual machine licensing is, let's say you need a Windows license. Well, we are already paying for Windows licenses. So the customer, when you spin up a virtual machine, you're not going out and buying your own Windows license. It's already part of kind of the package, as part of the cloud package. So when you deploy a new virtual machine, licensing and all that stuff is all taken care of, and that's really important to consider and to think about when you're doing that. So we have a whole list of RHEL distros and Windows boxes and everything like that you can actually just spin up from our public catalogs. You say, well, I need 15 Windows Server 2016 boxes. All right, go ahead and spin those up and automate that, and then put them all on this VNIC and all on this VLAN and et cetera, and DHCP your assigned IP addresses, all that stuff. All that traditional deployment stuff that you would normally do from Virtual Center can all be done from here. Now, if you have something specific that you need for you, you can actually create it and add it to your own catalog. So now all of a sudden you start creating your own dependency packages. Talk to a lot of customers where it's, they deploy, the same like 7 dependent virtual machines anytime that they're going to deploy a new thing. Well, create a VApp out of it, create, gold images, and then just boom, blast it out and you're good to go. It really kind of automates and facilitates the ability to quickly do those kinds of provisioning and stuff like that. If you have a cloud-to-cloud replication, you can leverage some of our Zerto or our Veeam technologies to go between clouds for replication as well as recovery. So all of that stuff is here and available. So very powerful tools when you start thinking about all the things that you have. If you're leveraging backups, they're all in here. Let's go back up here real quick and kind of show you the billing tab, just so you can kind of see. I know we showed a screenshot of it, but being able to see both real-time and historical billing. Whoops. Oh, let me go to 06, 02. Those 06 people that aren't paying their bill. No, just kidding. So we'll go to the Dallas 02 data center. We'll go to the billing tab, and it's going to pull up all of the billing information, and it showcases it based on CPU, RAM, storage, bandwidth, other, and that way you can really understand, what are some of the things that are consuming. Do I see a spike at the end of the year? Did somebody deploy a whole bunch of virtual machines that they weren't supposed to, or they didn't delete? You can see, estimates, long-term, short-term, all of that stuff. So when it comes to the, virtualization, adoption of cloud-based infrastructure, the change from, CapEx model to OpEx and all that stuff, this visibility is imperative because it can quickly spiral out of control if you're not paying attention to it, right? If everyone has access to create new virtual machines and there's no resource limitation anymore, back in the days, right, or, on site, it says, okay, well, you only have 12 gigs of RAM left, so you can't make anything more. But now there's no limitation. It just keeps on scaling and growing. So if it's real easy to deploy 50 virtual machines, but you don't use them, right, you still have to deal with that. So very, very important to understand what you're consuming and how much it's going to cost you during that entire time. So let's go back here. I'm going to, again, thank everyone from Experis and everybody for joining us today. If anybody has any quick questions, please feel free to ask. Jake, would you want to unmute and hop back on and say anything before we head on out? I may have lost you. Maybe. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming through. Please feel free to.
Sorry.
Oh, no, there's Jake. How you doing?
Hey. Sorry about that. I had to hit the mute on the computer as well.
No worries.
Just wanted to thank you for your presentation. Thank Island once again, and thank everybody for joining us today.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Like I said, this is the third in our series. A lot of great information. Reach out to your Experis people, and they can help you do everything from understanding your data protection, business continuity needs to, disaster recovery implementation, all the way up to cloud-based infrastructure and accelerating your IT initiatives. So we hope everybody has a wonderful 2019 holiday, and looking forward to a great 2020 with Experis and all of their customers and our customers working together to solve all these challenges. So thank you guys so much for coming today, and we hope to be talking with you guys very shortly.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.